The call came during my lunch break, Ryan's voice cracking with an urgency I'd never heard before. "Get out of the house now, Tessa. Don't pack, don't ask questions. Just go to your parents' place and wait for me there." I gripped my phone tighter, my sandwich forgotten on my desk. "Ryan, what's going on? Please just trust me on this. I'll explain everything later." The line went dead. My hands trembled as I gathered my purse. The marketing proposal I'd spent weeks perfecting lay abandoned on my computer screen. 3 months of marriage, and already my world was tilting on its axis. Taking off early? Sarah from accounting peered over her cubicle wall. Family emergency. The words tasted bitter. I'd used the same excuse last week when Margaret, my mother-in-law, had orchestrated another of her impromptu family dinners, the ones where she'd parade Clara around like some sort of trophy daughter-in-law that never was. The drive home was a blur of red lights and horn blasts. My mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had something happened to Frank? Was Margaret finally making her move to destroy our marriage? Or was it Clara, with her perfectly timed appearances and lingering touches on Ryan's arm? I pulled into our driveway, half expecting to find the house in flames. Instead, everything looked exactly as I'd left it this morning. The newspaper still on the porch, my gardening gloves draped over the railing. The normalcy felt wrong, somehow more threatening than any visible danger. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. "Heard about Ryan's call. Just checking if you're okay. We're all worried." We. That single word sent ice through my veins. How did she know about the call? And who exactly was we? I deleted the message without responding and dialed Ryan again. Straight to voicemail. Inside the house, everything seemed undisturbed, but the air felt heavy with secrets. I grabbed my laptop and a few essential documents from our home office. Whatever was happening, I wasn't walking into it blind. Another text buzzed through, Margaret this time. "Dear, perhaps we should talk before you do anything rash. Family matters are best handled within the family." I laughed, a harsh sound in the empty house. Family. Right. Because she treated me like family from day one, hadn't she? With her subtle digs about my career, her constant reminiscing about Ryan and Clara's childhood together, her pointed comments about traditional values. The front door creaked. I froze, clutching my laptop to my chest. "Tessa." Clara's voice floated through the hallway. "Your car's outside. I know you're home." I slipped into the kitchen, my heart hammering. Through the window, I could see Paul's car idling in the street, Clara's brother waiting behind the wheel. "We're just trying to help," Clara called out, her footsteps moving closer. "Margaret's worried sick about Ryan. He's not been himself lately, has he? Ever since the wedding." I eased open the back door, thankful I'd had it oiled last week. Clara's voice continued, honey sweet and reasonable, as I crept along the side of the house. My phone vibrated again. "Ryan? Don't let them find you." "Almost there. 10 minutes. I ran. Past the garden where Margaret had criticized my choice of flowers. Past the fence Ryan and I had painted together on our first weekend as homeowners. Past all the dreams I'd had of belonging to this family. As I pulled out of the neighborhood, I caught a glimpse of Clara in my rearview mirror, standing in our driveway with her phone pressed to her ear. She wasn't smiling anymore. I drove to my parents' house with my hands clenched on the steering wheel, my wedding ring catching the afternoon sun. Whatever game they were playing, whatever trap they'd set, they'd chosen the wrong woman to underestimate. I sat at my parents' kitchen table, staring at the family photos lining their walls. Happy faces, genuine smiles. Nothing like the brittle pleasantries at the Morgan family dinners. The memory of last week's disaster surfaced, sharp as broken glass. "More wine, Tessa dear?" Margaret had held the bottle over my glass, not waiting for an answer. "Clara, you remember how Ryan used to hate red wine, until you introduced him to that lovely Bordeaux on your trip to France?" Clara's laugh had tinkled like wind chimes. "Oh, that was ages ago. Before university, wasn't it, Ryan?" I'd watched my husband's face tighten. "I don't remember that trip." "Of course you do," Margaret had insisted. "It was right after that summer you two dated." The silence that followed had been deafening. Ryan had never mentioned dating Clara. Not once in our 2 years together. Now, sitting in my childhood home, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old social media posts. There they were, Ryan and Clara, tagged in countless photos over the years. Family vacations, holiday celebrations, casual dinners. In every image, Clara stood just a little too close, her hand always finding its way to Ryan's arm or shoulder. The doorbell rang, startling me from my investigation. Through the peephole, I saw Frank Morgan shifting nervously on the porch. "Tessa." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I opened the door but blocked the entrance. "Does Margaret know you're here?" He shook his head, looking older than his 62 years. "She thinks I'm at the hardware store. May I come in?" In the kitchen, Frank's hands trembled as he accepted a cup of coffee. I should have said something sooner. About Clara, about all of it. "Why now?" "Because I heard them planning." He stared into his cup. "Margaret and Clara, they were in the garden yesterday, talking about your honeymoon next month." My stomach clenched. "What about it?" "Clara's brother Paul. He's been following you, taking pictures. They're going to send them to Ryan, edited to make it look like." He trailed off, unable to finish. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "That's why Ryan called me today? Because of their photos?" Frank nodded. "He found them on his computer this morning. Clara must have uploaded them when she was over for dinner." "She's not well, Tessa. Her obsession with Ryan. It's gotten worse since the wedding. And Margaret encourages it. Margaret sees what she wants to see. She's always viewed Clara as the daughter she never had." He met my eyes. The daughter she could control. My phone buzzed, another text from Clara. "Just talk to Ryan. He's worried about your mental state. We all are. Let's meet and sort this out." I showed Frank the message. His face crumpled. "They'll try to isolate you, make you look unstable. It's what they did to Ryan's last girlfriend before you. Margaret convinced everyone the poor girl was mentally ill, spreading rumors about the family. What happened to her? She moved away. Changed her name, I think." Frank stood, his coffee untouched. "I should go. But Tessa, be careful. Margaret's been playing these games for 40 years. She's very good at them." After he left, I sat alone in the growing darkness, pieces clicking into place. The constant surveillance, the orchestrated run-ins with Clara, the subtle undermining of my confidence. They'd been laying groundwork for months. My phone lit up with Ryan's message. "On my way. Don't trust anything they say. I have proof." I walked to my old bedroom, where a photo album from my wedding day sat on the bookshelf. Flipping through it, I found what I was looking for. A candid shot of Clara watching Ryan during our first dance. Her expression wasn't one of friendly affection or even jealousy. It was hunger. The front door opened downstairs. Footsteps on the stairs, too heavy to be my parents'. "Tessa." Ryan's voice. "Are you up here?" I closed the album, my decision made. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. In marketing, my entire career was built on understanding human nature and manipulating perceptions. Time to show them how it's really done. Ryan spread the doctored photos across my parents' dining room table. Each one told a carefully crafted lie. Me embracing Paul in shadowy doorways, slipping into hotel lobbies, sharing intimate conversations in cafes. The timestamps matched days I'd been working late at the office. "Clara's brother has been following you for weeks," Ryan said, his voice tight. "They planted these on my work computer this morning, along with emails they'd fabricated between you and Paul." I picked up one photo, studying how they'd manipulated the lighting to make an innocent business lunch look like a clandestine meeting. "Your mother's fingerprints are all over this. She slipped up." Ryan pulled out his phone, playing a voice recording. Margaret's voice filled the room. "Once Ryan sees these, he'll have to admit Tessa isn't who he thinks she is. Clara will be there to help him through it, just like before." My fingers clenched around the photo. Before. Ryan's face darkened. "Remember what Dad said about my last girlfriend? There's more. Clara created a similar setup with doctored photos back then. But this time," he hesitated. "This time she made a mistake. Left metadata on the original photos showing when they were actually taken." A text lit up my phone, Clara again. "Ryan's not thinking clearly. Let me help fix this. I care about both of you. She's getting desperate," I said, showing Ryan the message. "There's something else." He pulled out a USB drive. Dad found this in Mom's study. It's everything, years of manipulation. Photos she edited, emails she faked, even a journal where she planned how to break up my relationships. She's been grooming Clara as my backup plan since high school. The front door opened downstairs. My parents' voices drifted up, followed by another Frank's. "They're here," Frank called up. "Margaret and Clara." They followed me. Ryan moved to the window. "Paul's car is blocking the driveway." I gathered the photos, my marketing brain already spinning possibilities. "Let them come up. I want to hear how they explain these timestamps." "Tessa." Ryan touched my arm. "They're dangerous when cornered." "So am I." Footsteps on the stairs. Clara appeared first, all concerned smiles and gentle hands. "Oh, thank goodness you're both here. We've been so worried." Margaret followed, her face a mask of maternal concern. "Ryan, darling, step away from her. You don't know what she's capable of." I held up one of the doctored photos. "Interesting choice of editing software, Clara. Adobe's timestamp feature is quite revealing." Color drained from Clara's face. Margaret stepped forward, reaching for the photo. "You're confused, dear. Those pictures show Paul following me for weeks?" I pulled out my phone, clicking play on a recording app. "Or show how you and Clara plan to plant them on Ryan's computer. Because I have to say, discussing criminal conspiracy in your garden wasn't very smart." "You recorded us?" Clara's voice shook. "No." Frank stepped into the doorway. "I did." Margaret whirled on her husband. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have." Frank's voice was steady. "I sent copies to everyone, family, friends, Clara's fiancé. Even that private investigator you hired last year to follow Tessa. Turns out he has quite a conscience when he learns he's been manipulated into participating in stalking." Clara lunged for the photos, but Ryan blocked her path. "It's over, Clara. All of it." "You don't understand," Clara whispered. "We were meant to be together. Your mother promised." "My mother promised a lot of things," Ryan cut in. "To a lot of people. But she doesn't control me anymore. And neither do you." I watched Clara's facade crack, years of obsession and manipulation showing through. She turned to Margaret, desperate. Tell him about the plan, about how we were going to fix everything." But Margaret was staring at Frank, 30 years of control slipping through her fingers. "You weak, pathetic man. After everything I've done for this family." "That's exactly why I did it," Frank said quietly. "For our family. Our real family." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "You have two choices. Leave now and never contact us again, or we take everything, the photos, the recordings, the evidence of stalking, to the police." Clara's face contorted. "You wouldn't." I met her gaze, letting her see the truth. "Try me." The silence stretched, heavy with decades of manipulation and lies. Then Margaret turned, her shoulders stiff with fury, and walked out. Clara remained, staring at Ryan with naked longing. "Clara," I said softly, "don't make me prove how far I'll go to protect what's mine." She fled, her sobs echoing down the stairs. But I felt no victory, only a cold certainty that this was just the beginning. The email arrived at midnight. A single photo attachment from an anonymous account. My hand shook as I opened it. Margaret and Clara outside a psychiatric facility, dated 3 years ago. The caption read, "Ask Ryan about Jessica." I stared at my sleeping husband on my parents' guest bed. His face troubled even in rest. Jessica. The name scratched at something in my memory. A whispered conversation at our wedding reception, quickly silenced when I'd approached. My phone buzzed. "Frank. Need to meet. Alone. The diner on 5th. Now." Ryan stirred. "Everything okay?" "Just work." I lied, the words bitter on my tongue. "Go back to sleep." The diner was empty except for Frank, hunched over a coffee cup. When I slid into the booth, he pushed a manila envelope across the table. "Jessica Martinez," he said. Ryan's fiancée before Clara orchestrated her breakdown. Inside the envelope, newspaper clippings told the story. Jessica Martinez, promising young attorney, committed after a public breakdown. Released 6 months later, she disappeared completely. Clara didn't just want to break them up, Frank continued. She wanted to destroy Jessica. And Margaret helped. How? The same way they're trying with you. Small things at first, moving items in Jessica's house, sending emails from fake accounts, arranging coincidental meetings that made her look unstable. He paused. Ryan never knew the full truth. He thought Jessica's breakdown was real. My coffee grew cold as Frank detailed their methodology. The gaslighting, the carefully planted evidence, the slow isolation from friends and family. Why tell me this now? Because they're escalating faster with you. They learned from their mistakes with Jessica. Frank's hands trembled. Margaret's already contacted your firm's HR department. Anonymous concerns about your mental health. The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright. Ryan would never believe. Ryan believed it about Jessica. Frank's eyes were haunted. He trusted his mother's concern then. And Clara. She's perfected her role as the supportive friend. My phone lit up with a text from Clara. Ryan's worried about you sneaking out at night. Let me help before things get worse. They're watching the house, I realized. Frank nodded. Paul's car. 2 blocks down. I scrolled through my photos, finding the one from my wedding. Clara watching Ryan during our first dance. The hunger in her eyes matched the woman who'd stood outside that psychiatric facility. There's something else, Frank said. Jessica didn't just disappear. The diner's door chimed. Clara walked in, her concerned smile perfectly practiced. Oh, thank goodness, she gushed. Ryan's been frantic. He woke up and you were gone. She reached for my arm. I jerked away. Don't touch me. Sweetie, you're not well. We can all see it. Her voice dripped sympathy. The paranoia, the late-night wanderings, the accusations. Just like poor Jessica. Clara. Frank's voice held a warning. She ignored him. Ryan's waiting outside. Let's get you home, get you help. Before you hurt yourself. Through the diner's windows, I saw Ryan's car pulling up. Margaret in the passenger seat. The trap was closing. I stood, my chair scraping loudly. You know what happened to Jessica, don't you? Clara's mask slipped for just a moment. Jessica was sick. She needed help. No. The revelation hit like lightning. She figured it out. That's why she disappeared. She wasn't running from a breakdown. She was running from you. Tessa. Ryan's voice from the doorway. Mom told me about the HR complaints. About your behavior. I met his eyes, seeing the doubt there. The same doubt that had probably clouded his judgment with Jessica. But I wasn't Jessica. Tell him, Clara, I said softly. Tell him about the facility. About the photos. Clara's composure cracked. Ryan, she's confused. The timestamps don't lie. I pulled out my phone, showing the anonymous email. Neither do psychiatric facility visitor logs. Should we call them? See who visited Jessica before her breakdown? The diner fell silent. In that moment, I saw my choices clearly. Run like Jessica or stand and fight. And I'd never been good at running. Ryan, I said, not breaking eye contact with Clara. I think it's time you heard the whole story about your ex-fiancé. The package arrived 3 days after the diner confrontation. No return address, just my name in careful handwriting. Inside, a USB drive and a note. You're not the first. You won't be the last. J. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. Video files, dozens of them, showing Clara and Margaret's methodical destruction of Jessica Martinez. Security footage, phone recordings, emails, a digital breadcrumb trail of calculated madness. I found Jessica. Ryan's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway of our temporary bedroom at my parents' house, his face ashen. She's in Seattle, working under her mother's maiden name. Did you talk to her? She agreed to video call. Tonight. He sat heavily on the bed. She said Clara visited her in the facility, told her if she ever came back, there'd be worse consequences than a psychiatric hold. My phone buzzed. Clara's fiancé, James. Can we meet? Something's not right with Clara. I showed Ryan the message. It's probably a trap. Or an opportunity. Ryan's jaw tightened. James needs to know what he's getting into. The cafe was crowded enough to feel safe. James sat alone, turning his coffee cup nervously. When he saw us, his face crumpled. Clara's pregnant, he blurted out. At least, that's what she told Margaret. But when I called her doctor, Let me guess, I said. No record of pregnancy. He nodded. And I found these. He slid his phone across the table. Photos of Clara outside our house watching through windows. Dozens of them spanning months. She doesn't know I saw them. My phone lit up, Frank. Margaret's gone. Cleared out her accounts this morning. They're making their move, Ryan muttered. James leaned forward. There's more. Clara's been meeting someone at the psychiatric facility where Jessica stayed. A doctor. They're building a case. The cafe door chimed. Clara walked in, her face a perfect mask of concern. Behind her, Paul blocked the exit. James, darling. Her voice dripped honey. I've been so worried. When Mother Morgan said you were meeting them. She placed a protective hand over her non-existent pregnancy. Stop lying, Clara. James stood. I know about the photos. About Jessica. Clara's mask slipped, just for a moment. They've poisoned you against me. Just like they're trying to poison everyone. She turned to the other customers. My fiancé's sister is mentally ill. We're just trying to get her help. People started staring. Phones came out. Recording this? I stood slowly. Good. Because Clara Bennett and Margaret Morgan are about to be famous for all the wrong reasons. You don't want to do this, Paul warned, moving closer. Actually, I do. I opened my laptop, turning it to face the growing crowd. Jessica Martinez sent me something interesting. Want to see how they drove her to a breakdown? Or should we start with the fake pregnancy records Clara's been creating? Clara lunged for the laptop. You stupid bitch. There it is. Ryan's voice cut through the chaos. He held up his phone, recording. The real Clara Bennett. She froze, realizing her mistake. The cafe had gone silent. Dozens of phones capturing her transformation from concerned friend to snarling aggressor. Where's my mother? Ryan asked quietly. Clara's laugh was brittle. Somewhere you'll never find her. She's making sure everything's ready. For when Tessa has her inevitable breakdown. You mean like this? I pressed play on Jessica's video. Clara's voice filled the cafe. Just sign the commitment papers, Jessica. Admit you're unstable, and this all goes away. James backed away from Clara, horror dawning on his face. What have you done? What I had to do. Clara's composure cracked completely. He was supposed to be mine. Margaret promised. After Jessica, after every other girl she helped me eliminate. She turned to Ryan, desperate. We were meant to be together. Your mother understood that. No, Ryan said softly. My mother used you. Just like she used everyone else. My phone buzzed one final time, an email from Jessica. Sending this to every news outlet now. Good luck. Clara saw the headline appear on my screen. Systematic gaslighting ring exposed. Prominent family's mental health manipulation scheme. In that moment, watching Clara's world implode, I felt no satisfaction. Only a bone-deep weariness and a single burning question. Where was Margaret, and what final trap had she set? The answer came sooner than expected, as police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The police didn't come for Clara. They came for me. Tessa Morgan, the officer read from his tablet. You're wanted for questioning regarding allegations of stalking, harassment, and cyber threats against Clara Bennett and Margaret Morgan. The cafe had gone silent. Phones still recorded, but now they were pointed at me. Clara's mask of victimhood slipped perfectly back into place, tears streaming down her face. See, she whispered. This is exactly what we were afraid of. Ryan stepped forward. This is ridiculous. We have proof. Of elaborate forgeries, Paul interrupted, holding up a folder. Created by your wife to harass my sister. The metadata proves it. My laptop. The USB drive. Everything Jessica sent. They'd somehow corrupted it all, twisted it back against me. I watched the officer scroll through what looked like my emails, my photos, all doctored to show an obsession with destroying Clara's life. Check the timestamps. I started, but Clara cut in. Just like with Jessica, she sobbed. She's trying to recreate what happened, but making me the villain this time. The doctors warned us this might happen. My phone buzzed one last time before the officer confiscated it. Frank? Margaret's at your office. She's speaking to HR now. The pieces clicked together. While we'd been focused on Clara's breakdown, Margaret had been methodically destroying my credibility, my career, my life. Ryan. I turned to my husband, seeing doubt flicker across his face. Don't let them do this. He reached for me, but the officer stepped between us. Sir, given the nature of the allegations, you should maintain distance until. He's my husband. And my son. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. She stood in the cafe doorway, elegant and composed. Who were trying to protect from your escalating behavior. The room spun. Everything we'd gathered, every piece of evidence, they'd planned for it all, turned it against us, made me look exactly like Jessica. Obsessed, unstable, dangerous. The psychiatric hold is temporary, the officer said quietly. Just until. No. Ryan's voice cracked. Mom, stop this. Margaret touched his arm. Sweetheart, we tried to handle this privately. But after what happened at the office today. What happened at the office? My voice sounded distant, strange. Security footage of you threatening Clara this morning, Paul supplied smoothly. Very convincing performance. But I hadn't been near the office. I'd been. The realization hit like ice water. They'd planned this months ago. Built their case while we thought we were building ours. Show them, I whispered to Ryan. Jessica's video call tonight. Already handled, Margaret said softly. The real Jessica Martinez called earlier, very disturbed by your attempts to impersonate her. She's willing to testify about your obsession with her story. Clara stepped closer, her voice gentle. Let them help you, Tessa. Like they helped me understand my feelings about Ryan weren't healthy. The ultimate twist, making Clara the reformed obsessive and me the new threat. I looked at James, still clutching his phone. The photos weren't taken by Clara, Paul finished. The metadata shows they came from your phone. Stalking her, building your case. Very thorough. The officer took my arm. Through the cafe window, I saw the news vans arriving. Margaret had orchestrated every detail, down to the public breakdown they'd predicted I'd have. Ryan, I tried one last time, but Clara was already beside him, playing the supportive friend. We'll take care of him, Margaret promised, while you get the help you need. As they led me out, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the cafe window. Wild-eyed, disheveled, exactly how they wanted me to look. How they planned for me to look. The news cameras rolled as I was guided into the police car. Through the window, I watched Clara comfort Ryan. Margaret standing protectively nearby. The perfect family tableau, with me cast as the unstable outsider who tried to destroy their happiness. Don't worry, the officer said kindly. The facility has an excellent reputation. The same facility where Jessica had been held. Where Clara had threatened her. Where they'd perfected their technique. The car door closed, sealing me in silence. In the rearview mirror, I saw Margaret smile. The facility's visitor room smelled of artificial lavender and despair. 3 days of observation had taught me their routines, their blind spots. Now I waited, watching Margaret and Clara arrange themselves across the table. Their faces masks of rehearsed concern. The doctors say you're not cooperating, Margaret began. I smiled, the same empty smile Clara had perfected. How's Ryan? Worried sick, Clara answered quickly. He wanted to come, but you couldn't risk him seeing the real Jessica Martinez, could you? Their mask slipped just slightly. Margaret recovered first. The delusions are getting worse. Dr. Andrews warned us. Dr. Andrews. I placed a USB drive on the table. The same one who helped you forge Jessica's commitment papers? He's been very cooperative since the FBI started investigating medical fraud. Clara's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. You're lying. Am I? I turned to the observation window. Frank. The door opened. Frank walked in, followed by Ryan and a woman I recognized from Jessica's photos. The real Jessica Martinez. Hello, Clara, Jessica said softly. It's been 3 years. Margaret stood so quickly her chair toppled. This is inappropriate. My daughter-in-law is having an episode. Your daughter-in-law, Ryan cut in, has been working with federal investigators for the past 72 hours. Every conversation in this facility is recorded, including your little chat with Dr. Andrews yesterday. Clara lunged for the door, but Frank blocked her path. Paul confessed everything, he said. About the faked photos, the forged emails. He took a plea deal this morning. You don't understand, Clara whispered, turning to Ryan. Everything I did was for us. Margaret promised. Margaret promised a lot of things, Jessica interrupted. To a lot of women. How many were there before me, Margaret? How many lives did you and Clara destroy to keep Ryan under your control? I stood, finally letting my mask fall. The thing about marketing? We understand patterns. Narratives. Once Jessica reached out, it wasn't hard to find the others. 6 women. 6 mental breakdowns. 6 lives destroyed. You planned this, Margaret hissed. Used your own commitment to trap us. I learned from the best. I moved closer, watching her facade crack. But unlike you, I had something you never expected. Actual proof. Actual witnesses. And a husband who chose me. Clara screamed, a raw sound of desperation, and threw herself at Ryan. She's lying. Just like the others. I'm the only one who truly loves you. The orderlies rushed in, but it was Jessica who spoke, her voice cutting through Clara's hysteria. That's exactly what you said before you visited me here. Before you told me what would happen if I ever came back. Ryan stepped away from Clara's grasping hands. It's over, Clara. The FBI has everything. The fake documents, the surveillance footage, Dr. Andrews' confession. Even Mom's offshore accounts where she paid everyone off. Margaret's composure finally shattered. You ungrateful. She lunged at me, but the orderlies were faster. I watched them restrain both women, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. You know what your biggest mistake was? I asked softly, assuming I'd play by your rules. That I'd break like the others. You'll regret this, Margaret spat as they led her away. You have no idea what I'm still capable of. Actually, Frank interrupted, we do. That's why I gave the FBI access to all your private accounts this morning, including the ones in the Caymans. Clara's sobs echoed down the hallway. Ryan took my hand as Jessica spoke with the federal agents. I'm sorry, he whispered, for doubting even for a moment. I squeezed his hand, watching Margaret and Clara being led away in handcuffs instead of me. You came through when it mattered. Frank touched my shoulder. The others are here. The women Margaret and Clara targeted. They're ready to testify. I nodded, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. We'd won, but the victory felt hollow somehow. Looking at Clara's broken form and Margaret's hatred, I realized revenge wasn't what I'd really wanted. Justice was. And as I walked out of the facility a free woman, I knew we'd found something better than revenge. We'd found truth. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all. The courtroom emptied slowly after Margaret's sentencing. 20 years for conspiracy, fraud, and false imprisonment. Clara had taken a plea deal, trading testimony for a lighter sentence. Paul would serve 5 years for his role. Justice served cold and clean. I lingered in my seat, staring at the judge's empty bench, until Ryan touched my shoulder. Ready? Almost. I pulled out an old photograph I'd found while packing up his childhood home. Margaret, much younger, stood beside another woman who shared her calculating smile. The back read, Margaret and Helen, sisters in arms. Dad confirmed it this morning, I said. Your Aunt Helen did the same thing to him that Margaret tried to do to you. Isolated him, controlled his relationships. It wasn't just about keeping you. It was about recreating her sister's perfect family fantasy. Ryan studied the photo. Helen died in a psychiatric facility. Dad always said she had problems, but now we know what really happened. I handed him another photo. Helen with a young Margaret, teaching her the art of manipulation. The pattern started long before us. Frank waited by the courthouse steps with Jessica and the other survivors. 6 women whose lives Margaret and Clara had nearly destroyed. Now they stood tall, unbroken. The support group meets next week, Jessica said. We're calling it Phoenix Rising. She smiled. From the ashes, you know? I watched them share knowing looks, these women who'd faced the same darkness I had. Their strength wasn't in revenge or even justice. It was in refusing to let the experience define them. The house is almost packed up, Frank said. Found this in Margaret's study. He handed me a leather-bound journal. Might help explain some things. Or not. Sometimes understanding the monster doesn't make it less monstrous. Inside, Margaret's elegant handwriting detailed decades of manipulation, not just of Ryan but of everyone around her. The last entry, dated the day before her arrest, read, "Tessa sees the game now, but she doesn't understand. It's not about winning. It's about playing forever. She thought she was teaching me." I realized. Every move, every countermove, she was grooming me to become her, just like Helen groomed her. Ryan took the journal, his face troubled. "We could burn it. End the pattern here." "No." I closed the journal firmly. "It belongs in evidence. For the next time someone like Margaret tries to play these games." We walked to our car, leaving the courthouse and its justice behind. Frank headed to his new apartment, free from Margaret's shadow. Jessica and the others dispersed, carrying their victory like shields against future darkness. At home, our real home, not the battlefield it had become, I found one last photo that Margaret had hidden. Ryan as a child, smiling genuinely, before his mother's manipulation had dimmed his light, before Clara had been positioned as his savior, before the games began. "We're having dinner with your parents tonight," Ryan said, watching me study the photo. "Mom wants to hear about the support group. My mother's cooking. My father's bad jokes. Simple things that Margaret had tried to twist into weapons. But she'd failed, because she'd never understood what real family meant." The doorbell rang, a delivery. Inside the package, a letter from Clara, forwarded by her lawyer. I started to tear it up, then stopped. Understanding the past didn't mean letting it control our future. I placed the unopened letter in a box with Margaret's journal and the old photos. Evidence of a pattern we'd broken. A legacy we'd refused to inherit. "Ready for dinner?" Ryan asked. I looked around our home at the life we were reclaiming. The shadows were still there, but they no longer held power. Margaret had wanted to teach me her game, but she'd taught me something else instead. How to end it. "Ready," I said, leaving the box of shadows behind. Sometimes victory isn't in winning the game. It's in refusing to play. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, on your own terms in the light.
I never thought I'd feel jealous watching someone else's mom make dinner, but there I was, frozen in Tessa's kitchen doorway, watching Mrs. Monroe teach her daughter how to properly dice an onion. The way she guided Tessa's hands, laughing at her daughter's exaggerated tears from the fumes, it hit me like a punch to the gut. My name's Lila, and I've spent 18 years pretending I was fine with how things were in my family. But something about that simple moment between Tessa and her mom cracked something open inside me that I couldn't close again. "You're holding the knife too flat, honey," Mrs. Monroe said, adjusting Tessa's grip. "There you go. Now you won't slice your fingers off." She kissed the top of Tessa's head, and I had to look away. "Earth to Lila," Tessa called out. "You gonna help us with this curry or just stand there looking tragic?" I forced a smile and stepped into their warm, chaotic kitchen. Counter was covered in half-chopped vegetables, and something aromatic simmered on the stove. It was so different from my house, where takeout containers and pristine and used appliances ruled the kitchen. "Sorry, just zoned out for a second," I said, grabbing a knife. "What do you need me to do?" Mrs. Monroe handed me a pile of bell peppers. "These need to be julienne, that means thin strips, sweetie. And tell me how that college application process is going. Your mother mentioned you were looking at state?" I focused on the pepper, carefully removing the seeds. "Actually, I'm thinking about taking a gap year. Maybe work for a while, figure things out." I waited for the lecture about wasting potential, the one my parents had already given me twice this week. Instead, Mrs. Monroe just nodded. "That's perfectly reasonable. Sometimes we need time to find our path." She squeezed my shoulder as she passed, and I nearly cut myself from the unexpected gesture. My phone buzzed, probably my mother reminding me about dinner. I'd been avoiding going home lately, making excuses to stay at Tessa's or the library. Anything to dodge another silent meal where the only sounds were forks scraping plates and my father's occasional comments about his dental practice. "Stay for dinner?" Tessa asked, reading my mind as usual. "Mom always makes too much anyway." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my father. Family meeting tonight. Mandatory. 7 p.m. sharp. Can't, I said, showing Tessa the text. Apparently, we're having a family meeting. Ooh, sounds serious, Tessa waggled her eyebrows. Maybe they're finally getting you that pony you asked for when you were 7. I forced a laugh, but something felt off. My parents didn't do family meetings. They did carefully scheduled appointments and efficiently managed conversations, usually about my academic performance or career trajectory. I should head out, I said, washing my hands. Thanks for letting me help with dinner, Mrs. Monroe. Anytime, sweetheart. You're always welcome here. She gave me a quick hug and I had to blink back sudden tears. The walk home felt longer than usual. Our house stood dark and imposing against the evening sky, every window dark except for my father's study. Through the glass, I could see him on the phone, pacing with that focused expression he got when closing a deal or planning an investment. My mother's car wasn't in the driveway yet, but her text had confirmed she'd be home for the meeting. Whatever this was about, it was big enough to disrupt her usual late nights at the office. I stood at the bottom of our perfect stone walkway, looking up at our perfect house with its perfect landscaping, and felt something shift inside me. Whatever was coming, whatever this meeting was about, I had a feeling it would change everything. Taking a deep breath, I started up the path, the smell of Tessa's family's curry still clinging to my clothes. A reminder of everything I didn't have waiting for me behind that heavy front door. The family meeting turned out to be more of an execution, just with expensive wine instead of a last meal. My parents sat across from me at our formal dining table, their faces wearing the same expression they used when firing household staff. We're moving to Switzerland, my father announced, swirling his wine like this was a casual dinner conversation. I've accepted a position with an international dental consortium. Your mother will be heading their PR department. I waited for the rest, the part about my college plans, about where I'd be living. The silence stretched until I realized they weren't going to say it. I had to ask, when do we leave? My mother's perfectly manicured fingers tapped against her wine glass. We leave in 3 weeks. You, however, will not be joining us. The words hit like ice water. What? You're 18 now, Lila, my father said, his tone practical. Old enough to start building your own life. We've arranged for your trust fund to become accessible. And there's enough there for a modest apartment and living expenses while you attend university. I stared at my mother, searching for any hint of emotion. She met my gaze with the same detached interest she showed during charity galas. This is an opportunity for you to develop independence, she said. We've provided everything you need to succeed. Everything except parents who gave a damn. When were you planning to tell me? Or was this meeting my notice to vacate? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Don't be dramatic, my father sighed. We're giving you 3 weeks to make arrangements. That's more than generous. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood. Right. Generous. Like abandoning your kid is some kind of gift. We're not abandoning you, my mother's voice sharpened. We're treating you like the adult you are. Many young people would be grateful for this level of financial support. I laughed, the sound harsh in our too-perfect dining room. Yeah, I'm sure lots of kids dream of being bought off so their parents can start a new life without them. Moving toward the stairs, I heard my father call out, "Where are you going?" We haven't finished discussing the arrangements. I'm going to pack, I shot back. Wouldn't want to waste any of your generous 3-week notice. In my room, I grabbed my laptop and started searching for apartments, my vision blurring. A notification popped up, an email from my mother, already forwarding contact information for realtors and financial advisors. Of course. They'd probably had this planned for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. How was the family meeting? Everything okay? Before I could respond, I noticed an envelope that had fallen from my mother's home office while I was storming upstairs. The address caught my eye. It was to my Aunt Marge, my mother's estranged sister who we never discussed. The letter was unsealed. I knew I shouldn't read it, but at this point, what more could they do to me? The contents made my hands shake. Marjorie, I know you'll never forgive me for what happened with David. I live with that choice every day. But now that Graham and I are leaving, I need you to watch over Lila. She has too much of him in her, that same softness that made David so vulnerable. I can't protect her from that anymore. Who was David? And what choice was my mother living with? A knock at my door made me shove the letter under my pillow. My father stood there, holding a folder. "These are the documents you'll need," he said, placing them on my desk. "The realtor can show you properties starting tomorrow." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. But of what? "Dad," I started, but he was already turning away. "Get some rest, Lila. You have a lot to arrange in the next few weeks." I sat on my bed, the mysterious letter burning under my pillow, my phone buzzing with Tessa's concerned messages, and realized I had two choices. I could do what I'd always done, follow their plans, be the perfect daughter even in abandonment, or I could finally start asking the questions they never wanted me to ask. Starting with finding out who David was and what my mother had done to him. The Moonlight Cafe wasn't my first choice for a job. But beggars can't be choosers when they're racing against a 3-week deadline to build an independent life. Leo Hargrove, the owner, hired me on the spot, his smile a little too warm as he showed me around the kitchen. "Such a shame about your parents," he said, demonstrating how to work the espresso machine. "I knew your mother back in high school. She was different then." The way he said different made me look up sharply, but his expression gave nothing away. Everyone in this town seemed to have secrets about my family except me. "Different how?" I asked, trying to sound casual while steaming milk. Leo shrugged, but his eyes held mine a moment too long. "People change. Sometimes for good reasons." He glanced at the clock. "Take your break. We should talk about your situation." In his office, Leo leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You know, I have an apartment above the cafe. Previous manager lived there. It's sitting empty now." My heart jumped. The real estate agent had shown me nothing but overpriced dumps all week. "Really? Could be yours. Reduced rent for an employee, of course." He smiled that too warm smile again. "We'd need to work out some arrangements." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. "What kind of arrangements?" "Nothing unreasonable. Extra shifts, helping with books, keeping me company during late nights." He reached across the desk, his fingers brushing my hand. "I could be very generous to the right person." I jerked back, nearly knocking over my chair. "I should get back to work." "Don't be hasty, Lila. You're in a tough spot. I'm offering help." His voice hardened slightly. "Your mother would understand. She made similar choices when she was young." The implications hit me like a slap. "What exactly do you know about my mother?" "Enough to know the apple doesn't fall far from the tree." He stood, moving around the desk. "Think about it. The offer stands. For now." I backed toward the door. "I quit." "You're just like him," Leo called after me as I fled. David never could see an opportunity when it was right in front of him either. I froze. "David?" But Leo just smiled and turned away, leaving me with another piece of the puzzle I couldn't quite fit. Sighed, I slumped against the building, hands shaking as I pulled out my phone and the crumpled letter from my pocket. 2 mentions of David in 2 days after 18 years of never hearing the name. I googled David Caldwell plus our town name. The first result made my blood run cold. Local teen's disappearance remains unsolved after 20 years. The grainy photo showed a boy around my age, with a familiar smile that hit me like a punch to the gut. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "The realtor said you haven't chosen an apartment yet. Time is running out." Another buzz. "Stay away from Leo Hargrove." I stared at the second message, anger and confusion burning in my throat. Now she wanted to protect me? After arranging to abandon me in the same town where her nephew had vanished? My fingers moved before I could think better of it, typing in Aunt Marge's address from the letter. It was only a 20-minute drive. Going to be late, I texted my parents. Don't wait up. The response came instantly. Do not contact Marjorie. This isn't up for discussion. But I was done with their discussions, done with their secrets and schemes. If they wouldn't tell me the truth about David, about why they were really leaving town, about what Leo knew, then I'd find someone who would. I got in my car and pulled up directions to Aunt Marge's house, the newspaper article about David still open on my phone. Whatever had happened 20 years ago, whatever choice my mother had made, it was all connected to why they were abandoning me now. And I was going to find out exactly what they were running from. Aunt Marge's house looked exactly like the kind of place someone with secrets would live, all overgrown hedges and peeling paint, with wind chimes that rattled like old bones in the evening breeze. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before working up the courage to knock. The door opened before my knuckles could touch it. I wondered when you'd show up. Aunt Marge looked nothing like my mother, where Celeste was all polished edges. Marge was soft curves and faded flannel. You have his eyes. David's. The name slipped out before I could stop it. Something flickered across her face. Come in before the neighbors start talking. God knows they've done enough of that over the years. The inside was cluttered but clean, with mismatched furniture and walls covered in photographs. I stopped at one showing my mother as a teenager, her arm around a smiling boy who could only be David. That was 2 weeks before, Marge said quietly. Before everything changed. What happened to him? She moved to the kitchen, putting on a kettle. Your mother never told you? My mother never tells me anything. I followed her, watching as she pulled out 2 chipped mugs. But Leo Hargrove seems to know all about it. The mug slipped from Marge's hands, shattering on the linoleum. You've spoken to Leo? He offered me a job. And an apartment. And other things. Marge's face went pale. You stayed away from him? I quit. But he said something about my mother making similar choices when she was young. That bastard, Marge whispered, her hand shaking as she cleaned up the broken ceramic. After all these years, he's still... My phone buzzed, another text from my mother. Come home immediately. We know where you are. They're going to try to stop me from finding out the truth, aren't they? I showed Marge the message. She straightened up, something hardening in her expression. Your mother's been running from the truth for 20 years. But maybe it's time someone finally told it. Before she could continue, headlights swept across the windows. Car door slammed. Marjorie! My mother's voice, sharp as broken glass. Open this door. Marge grabbed my arm. Back door. Go to the garage. There's a box on the top shelf marked David's things. Take it. Read everything. Then you'll understand why they're leaving and why they want you gone too. Marge, please. Go. I'll hold them off. But Lila. Her eyes met mine. Whatever you read, remember, your mother wasn't the only one who made choices that night. We all did. Even David. I slipped out just as the front door burst open. Through the kitchen window, I saw my parents enter, my father looking uncomfortable, my mother radiating cold fury. Where is she? Celeste demanded. Hello, sister. 20 years since you've crossed my threshold, and that's how you greet me. I crept into the garage, finding the box exactly where Marge said it would be. Inside was a stack of newspapers, letters, and a leather-bound journal. The first headline made my blood freeze. Local teen missing after confrontation at Moonlight Cafe. Beneath it was a photo of Leo Hargrove, 20 years younger, being questioned by police. And there, in the background, barely visible, my mother, being led away in tears. A noise from the house made me jump. I shoved everything back in the box and slipped out the side door just as I heard my mother's voice rise. You have no right to tell her anything about that night. She has every right to know why her cousin disappeared, Marge shot back. And why you've been protecting his killer all these years. I nearly dropped the box. Killer? My mother had protected David's killer? As if sensing my thoughts, my phone lit up with one final message from my mother. Whatever you think you know, you don't understand. Come home now or there will be consequences. But standing there in the dark, clutching a box full of 20-year-old secrets, I realized I was done letting them threaten me with consequences. It was time they faced some of their own. I spent the night in Tessa's garage, surrounded by David's box of secrets. The newspapers painted a familiar story. Teenage boy vanishes after late-night argument at local cafe. But David's journal told a different tale, one that made my hands shake as I read. Leo knows about Mom and Uncle Jack, the last entry read. Says he'll tell everyone if I don't keep quiet. But Celeste says she has a plan. My mother had a plan. And hours later, David disappeared. Dawn was breaking when Tessa found me, still reading. Your mom's been calling everyone, she said, sitting beside me. She even called my parents at midnight. Did you know about any of this? I showed her the newspaper clipping about David. Mom and Dad never talk about it. But sometimes when your mom comes up in conversation, they get this look. She trailed off, reading over my shoulder. Wait, Uncle Jack? As in your dad's brother. The one who died in that car accident the year before I was born. I pulled out another letter, this one from David to my mother. Except according to this, he didn't die in an accident. He killed himself after Leo threatened to expose their affair. My phone buzzed. Aunt Marge, your mother's looking for you. Be careful. Leo's helping her search. Why would she team up with Leo? Tessa asked. If he's the one who? Because they're both protecting something bigger than David's disappearance. I held up the journal. The last few entries, David was investigating money moving through the cafe. Large deposits, always after Uncle Jack's dental practice made withdrawals. Money laundering? Through Dad's practice too, after Uncle Jack died. David figured it out, threatened to expose everything. I closed the journal, feeling sick. No wonder they're running to Switzerland. And leaving me behind as a distraction. Tessa grabbed my arm. Lila, look. Through the garage window, we could see Leo's car crawling past, scanning the street. My phone lit up again, my mother. Whatever David told you in those journals, he was confused. Come home. We can explain everything. How does she know about the journals? Tessa whispered. Because Aunt Marge must have told her what she gave me. I started shoving everything back in the box. Which means... A knock at the garage door made us both jump. Lila. Aunt Marge's voice. I know you're in there. Please, we need to talk. I opened the door cautiously. Marge looked exhausted, her eyes red. I had to tell them what I gave you. They have leverage. You mean they threatened you? I said flatly. Like they threatened David? It's complicated. What happened that night? Was my mother involved in David's disappearance? Marge flinched. She was trying to protect him. We all were. But Leo, he had other plans. And now you're all protecting Leo? After what he did. We're protecting you. Marge's voice cracked. Why do you think your mother's leaving you behind? As long as you're here, safe and ignorant, Leo won't. Car door slammed outside. My mother's voice carried through the garage. Marjorie? Is she in there? Marge grabbed my shoulders. Whatever you do, don't confront Leo. He's been watching you since you turned 18. Just like he watched David. Why? What does he want? The same thing he wanted then, someone young and desperate enough to be controlled. To keep the operation running while your parents established the European connection. Another car pulled up Leo's distinctive engine. Marge pressed something into my hand, a key. Storage Unit 23, Cross Creek Facility. Everything David collected is there. The proof he never got to show the police. She pushed me toward the back door. Run. And Lila? I'm sorry. For all of it. As I slipped out into the morning light, I heard Leo's voice. Found her car around the corner. She can't have gone far. They were wrong about one thing. I wasn't running from the truth anymore. I was running toward it, straight to the evidence that would bring down everyone who'd had a hand in destroying David's life. And maybe, finally, give him the justice he deserved. The storage unit door groaned open, revealing stacks of boxes and a musty darkness that made my skin crawl. I'd barely switched on my phone's flashlight when I heard footsteps behind me. I knew you'd come here. My mother's voice, tired and hollow. Just like David did. I spun around. She stood in the doorway, looking smaller somehow, her perfect posture crumbling at the edges. How did you? Marge texted me. She's trying to protect you, even if you can't see it. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. We all were. By covering up his murder? Murder. She laughed, a broken sound. Is that what you think happened? The journal entries, the money laundering, Leo's threats. Leo didn't kill David. She moved to a stack of boxes, running her fingers along one marked evidence. David killed himself. Right here in this storage unit. After I convinced him to help us trap Leo. The flashlight beam trembled. What? We thought we were so clever. David would pretend to join Leo's operation, gather evidence, wear a wire. Her voice cracked. But Leo knew. He always knew. He showed David photos of me, of Jack, of all the evidence he had against our family. Said if David went to the police, we'd all go down. So David just gave up. He left a note, saying he couldn't live with either choice, destroying his family or letting Leo win. She pulled something from her pocket, a folded piece of paper, worn at the creases. I found him here. Too late. I grabbed the note, my hand shaking as I read David's last words. I'm sorry, Aunt Celeste. I tried to be strong enough. Take care of Mom. That's why you're so cold, I whispered. Why you never. I got your cousin killed by trying to fix things. By thinking I could outsmart someone like Leo. She met my eyes. When I saw you getting closer to him at the cafe, watching him draw you in like he did David, a metallic click cut her off. The storage unit door. Quite the family reunion. Leo's voice made my blood freeze. Though you forgot to invite me. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway fluorescence. Something glinted in his hand. You're not taking her too. My mother stepped between us. Actually, Celeste, I think it's time Lila learned the whole truth. About David, about Jack. He smiled. About what really happened to all that money. Mom. My voice sounded small, even to me. What's he talking about? Tell her, Celeste. Tell her who really suggested using David as bait. Who knew he was unstable, knew he might crack under pressure. That's not, my mother started. Tell her who kept the operation running after David died. Who used her own guilt to build our little empire. He stepped closer. Tell her why you're really running to Switzerland. My mother's shoulders sagged. I had to protect what was left of my family. By working with him. The betrayal burned in my throat. After what he did to David, I did what I had to do. And now, she turned to Leo. Now we're done. The evidence, the accounts, everything David collected, it's all here. Take it. Leave Lila out of this. Leo's laugh echoed off the metal walls. Oh, Felicite. You still think you're in control? He raised the gun. But we both know how this ends. Just like it did with David. The storage unit plunged into darkness as my flashlight died. A shot rang out. Someone screamed, maybe me. When the emergency lights flickered on, my mother lay crumpled against the boxes, red spreading across her designer blouse. Leo was gone, along with the box marked evidence. Mom, I pressed my hands against the wound, feeling her blood seep through my fingers. Stay with me. Please. Her eyes focused on something behind me. Run, she whispered. Footsteps approached. Like mother, like daughter, Leo's voice came from the doorway. Always trying to fix things that should stay broken. I turned, seeing the gun aimed at my head, and realized with startling clarity that I finally understood how David felt in his final moments. Sometimes there are no good choices left. The fluorescent lights flickered as Leo's finger tightened on the trigger. My mother's blood was still warm on my hands, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. You won't shoot me, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. You need me. Leo's smile didn't reach his eyes. And why's that? Because I'm the only one who knows about the second set of books. The words tumbled out before I could second-guess them. The ones David actually hid. His gun hand wavered slightly. Behind me, I heard my mother's labored breathing. You're bluffing, Leo said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. David never had time to tell you about them? Course not. You scared him into suicide before he could. I stood slowly, positioning myself between Leo and my mother. But he told someone else. Someone you never suspected. A door slammed somewhere in the storage facility. Leo's head jerked toward the sound. You really think David would trust his aunt? I pressed. The sister of the woman having an affair with his uncle? No. He trusted someone his own age. Someone who could wait years to use the information. Tessa, Leo breathed. That's why you two were always at the cafe. I forced a laugh. All those years, watching you, learning your operation. Did you really think I applied for that job by accident? The sirens were closer now. Leo's face twisted with rage and doubt. You're lying, he snarled, but his eyes darted to the door again. Maybe. But can you risk it? Police are coming. If those books surface. I took a step forward. How many people did you really kill, Leo? David wasn't the first, was he? Shut up. The gun shook in his hand. Or was it all just manipulation? Making people think death was their only escape? Another step. Like you tried with me? I said shut. The storage unit door burst open. Aunt Marge stood there, holding something that made Leo's face go white. Looking for this? She held up a USB drive. David gave it to me the night he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should keep it safe until Lila was old enough. That's impossible, Leo whispered. You weren't even in town that night? Marge's laugh was bitter. I was. Celeste called me worried about David. I got here too late to save him, but not too late to find what he left behind. Leo swung the gun toward Marge. I lunged, grabbing his arm. The shot went wide, sparking off metal walls. We grappled for the weapon as Marge shouted something I couldn't hear over the blood pounding in my ears. His finger found the trigger again. I twisted, remembering a self-defense move Tessa's dad had taught us years ago. The gun went off. Leo staggered back, a look of surprise crossing his face as red bloomed across his chest. He fell, the gun clattering away. Lila, my mother's voice, weak but urgent. The box. Under the tarps. I scrambled to where she pointed. Under dusty tarps lay a metal box, its lid covered in familiar handwriting David's. He knew, my mother whispered as I opened it. Knew what would happen. Left everything we'd need. Inside were files, photos, USB drives, 2 decades of evidence against not just Leo but everyone involved in his operation. And on top, a letter addressed to me. Dear Lila, it began. If you're reading this, it means you're facing the same choice I did. But you're stronger than I was. You'll make the right decision. The storage unit filled with police and paramedics. As they loaded my mother onto a stretcher, she grabbed my hand. I'm sorry, she said. For everything. For not being strong enough to end this years ago. I squeezed her hand, watching Leo's still form being covered with a sheet. It's ended now. Aunt Marge wrapped an arm around me as the paramedics wheeled my mother away. David would be proud, she said softly. You finished what he started. I looked down at the letter in my hands, thinking of choices and consequences, of strength and weakness, of the thin line between justice and revenge. No, I said. We all did. 6 months later, I stood in front of the renovated Moonlight Cafe, now transformed into a community center. The grand opening banner fluttered in the spring breeze, and Aunt Marge squeezed my hand as we watched families stream inside. David would have loved this, she said softly. My mother approached slowly, still walking with a slight limp. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. The art therapy program starts next week, she said. We already have 10 teens signed up. The irony wasn't lost on any of us, turning Leo's hub of manipulation into a safe haven for vulnerable youth. Sometimes the best revenge is healing what your enemy tried to destroy. Dad called again, I told them, watching their reactions carefully. Wants to me explain his side of things. What are you going to do? My mother asked, her voice careful, neutral. I pulled an envelope from my bag, the last piece of David's legacy found buried in one of his boxes. I think I'll send him this instead. Inside was a photo of my father with Leo, dated years before I was born, both men smiling over signed documents. On the back, David had written, "The beginning of everything. Remember who chose this path." Are you sure? Marge asked. Some doors are hard to close once they're opened. Some doors shouldn't stay closed, I replied, thinking of all the secrets that had poisoned our family. Besides, he deserves to know why I'm choosing to stay here. My mother flinched slightly at that, but didn't argue. We'd spent months rebuilding our relationship, learning to talk without hiding behind perfect facades and practiced lies. It wasn't always pretty, but it was real. Tessa emerged from the center, grinning. You guys have to see this. The kids are already filling up the suggestion box. Someone even asked if we could start a creative writing program. For processing trauma through storytelling, my mother mused. That's actually brilliant. Speaking of storytelling, Marge pulled something from her purse, a worn journal with David's name on the cover. I think it's time for this to have a new home. I stared at it. But that's the journal that started everything? Yes. She pressed it into my hands. But look at the blank pages in the back. They're waiting for a new story. Your story. As if on cue, a group of teenagers walked past, laughing and pushing each other playfully. They reminded me of David's photo, of how young and full of hope he'd been before everything went wrong. Maybe some stories don't need endings, I said, running my fingers over the journal's worn cover. Maybe they just need new beginnings. My mother touched my shoulder, a gesture that once would have felt foreign but now carried the weight of everything we'd survived together. New beginnings require letting go of old endings. I nodded, thinking of the letter I'd written to my father, still unsent. I forgive you, but I don't need you. I found my family in the truth, not in comfortable lies. Inside the center, someone started playing piano halting, beautiful notes floating through the open doors. Life finding its way through the cracks of what was broken. Ready, Tessa called from the entrance. The writing workshop's about to start. I looked at these women, my aunt who kept faith, my friend who kept secrets, my mother who kept trying, and felt something settle in my chest. Not peace exactly, but purpose. Actually, I said, I think I'm ready to tell my own story. As we walked inside together, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the window, 4 women, all carrying different pieces of the same broken history but moving forward anyway. Behind us, David's journal waited in my bag, its blank pages promising something I'd never understood until now. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making others pay for the past. Sometimes it's about refusing to let that past define your future. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find the family you need in the aftermath of losing the one you thought you wanted.